DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation at Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation insider Connor Riley. Got some unexpected news coming out of Georgia practice earlier this week. Former Florida head coach Billy Napier stopped by, and there was a strong reaction from the college football world. Now, Kirby did address this yesterday and said that they're just friends, and he had stopped by. I mean, do you really think that's all it was? And do you think maybe people overreacted to this, Connor?
Look, Arch Manning and Ty Simpson were talking this week about, Arch Manning facing Oklahoma, Ty Simpson facing Georgia. Like, this sort of thing happens. And, as I pointed out in the story that I wrote about this week, Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian are friends as well. And while, yes, Napier has the indignity of being fired and having the free time to go and visit a Georgia practice, I'm sure all these coaches that know each other as well as they do are talking and texting and sharing intel. I'm sure Kirby's talking with Lane Kiffin this week as they're getting ready to take on Florida there because Georgia faced a Billy Gonzalez-led Florida team. So I'm not scandalized by this. And hey, if you're Kirby Smart in Florida, Billy Napier beat Steve Sarkisian in Texas earlier this year. If he gave you any great tips or tricks, good on you for being able to bring that in.
Yeah, I think so too, and especially because Billy Napier's brother is a high school football head coach here in the state of Georgia. I imagine that he'll probably go to his brother's game on Friday night. And also, too, I think I was just more surprised to see the reaction from Florida fans, and I get that this is a bitter rivalry that's been one-sided lately, but it's like y'all are the same people that wanted him out. I kind of feel like he should be safe from all the criticism on the Florida side. I would understand more if it was Texas fans who had something to say about this, and I don't know. They wanted him out, so I feel like you kind of have to just let it go, and it's not like Georgia and Florida are going to play each other again this season. So a very strong reaction to something that was probably a very small ordeal.
Yeah, Florida didn't have to fire Billy Napier when they did. They elected to fire him after a win over Mississippi State, and there's a world where they could have let him finish coaching out the season and then fire him at the end of the year. That's kind of the way things used to be done. But I think in this mob-ruled college football world, Florida wanted Billy Napier gone. And hey, look, if Billy Napier gives Kirby Smart any tips or tricks that helps him beat Texas, just another way you can thank the Florida Gators and the Billy Napier experience.
The mob-ruled college football world is probably the best explanation of where the state of this sport is at. You mentioned Arch Manning, Ty Simpson. That's something that we'll talk about later in the show. But before that, we have so much to get to. So let's go ahead and get started on DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
The last SEC game of the season, the big home game. You've got Charlotte next week, but this feels like the final big home game. What a way to close it out with none other than Texas. Texas making the trip to Athens for the very first time. So we're going to do some Texas preview, but also just talk about how the expectation of this Georgia program has changed after their win against Mississippi State. We'll also do our dog bite segment. We're going to talk about Nate Frazier, some of the dogs that are in semi-finalist positions for big awards, as well as Arch Manning and Ty Simpson, their communication that's happening. We'll do our meme machine where we do our favorite tweets of the week. Also, too, we're going to take a look back at Cash Jones, his horns down from last year, and we're going to pick the players on this team that we think could get away with doing something like that this year. Then also, too, we'll do our touchdown predictions where we're going to have to do a little accountability check kind of mixed into that because there's a story that we need to get straight. But first, let's talk about the dogs. First off, let me just give a shout out to the Cardiac Dogs for not giving me anxiety going into halftime on Saturday. Both sides of the ball looked explosive, polished, and motivated. It feels like this is the performance that we've been waiting for this entire season.
Yeah, I've been pretty skeptical about Georgia being a team that can win a national championship this season. And I'm not quite willing to go there just yet. But if they follow up on what they showed at Mississippi State with another encouraging performance against Texas, I would be maybe to willingly move off of the position of Georgia not being a team that can win the national championship. Because going on 38-0 runs like Georgia did on Saturday against Mississippi State is what championship teams do. Even in a world where, we've seen Mississippi State, they took Tennessee to overtime, they took Texas to overtime. For Georgia to win that game with such ease, knowing they had a big game the week ahead, knowing they were coming off an emotional game the week before against Florida, for them to handle business like they did, I thought was the sign of a maturing team. It's a team that we've talked all year about their youth. If they're starting to put it together and play complementary football on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball, that changes, in my opinion, what this team is capable of doing in 2025. But they've got to back it up again this week against a Texas team that is playing for their college football playoff lives.
1,000%, because I do feel like Georgia and Texas are similar in the sense that maybe not the teams that people anticipated them to be, but also to, at least on the Texas end as well, that they've found a way to mostly win these close games. So I feel like they're similar in that sense. But like you said, the ceiling has been raised, and I feel like Georgia has to get a somewhat comfortable win. Like, I don't mean by 14 points or something, maybe a little bit more than a touchdown, because you want to see that consistency back to back, or else I feel like people are still going to look at this Georgia team as inconsistent and only able to play from behind. So it'll be interesting to watch two teams on Saturday that what they've done well is play 4-quarter games.
Yeah, and it's a Georgia team that, again, if we had told you at the beginning of the year that Georgia and Texas was a top 10 game, you would have absolutely taken it and said, yeah, that seems like something that is going to end up working out. And it is still that for Georgia right now, albeit I think very differently. It's just a Texas team that was number one in the country to open the season. And now we're at a spot where Georgia's the favorite. Georgia's the team that looks better. Georgia's the team with the better quarterback, which I don't think anybody had in preseason. So I think it speaks to where Georgia has gotten over the course of the season, and we knew this was going to be the case at the beginning of the year. They were going to get better over the course of the year and improve from game 1 to now going into game 10. They've done that. And if they go out and show and improve again on Saturday, I think, to your point, Kaylee, this is a team that is capable of pulling off a big win and winning comfortably against a Texas team that has just not, quite frankly, been all that great on the road this season.
Yeah, so I want to focus in on some position groups that I feel like maybe lacked in the earlier part of the season, and they're really starting to progress and get to the best versions of themselves and how they can establish some more credibility with a win on Saturday. I think that starts with the offensive line, who faced injuries early on, had to play freshmen, and now this is the most complete version of the offensive line that we've seen. It's the healthiest version of the offensive line that we've seen. And, Texas produces a lot of sacks. They're really good at stopping the run. That's the strength of this team. And on the other end, maybe it doesn't feel like it all the time, but this Georgia team is only second in the conference for sacks allowed. They've done a good job at allowing the run game to be affected. So it's strength on strength, and I think this is a good opportunity to show that all this work that the true freshmen have been doing on the offensive line, getting Ernest Green back, having Monroe Freeling at his best at the back half of the season, I think a performance against a worthy Texas defensive line gives them some credibility too, and just goes to show that all the early mess that happened at the beginning of the season, that's fine, because we're getting the best version of them now, which is where you want them to be.
Yeah, if Georgia's going to win this game on Saturday, its offensive line, I think, is going to be a big reason why that is the case. They just played their best game of the season against Mississippi State. And look, Texas and Mississippi State have wildly different body types there on the defensive line. I mean, Colin Simmons might be the best player that Georgia faces during the regular season this year. And look, Texas does a great job of stopping teams on first and second down, forcing them to go into third and long situations. This is when they're able to pin their ears back and get after opposing passers. So I think it's going to be critical in this game for Georgia's offensive line to keep Gunnar Stockton upright, to open up some holes in the rushing game on first and second down. And for a Georgia offense standpoint, this doesn't necessarily have that much to do with the offensive line, but how Zachariah Branch is used in the screen game, where if Texas is going to want to clog the box and make things difficult in the middle of the field and try and prevent Georgia from running between the tackles, Georgia's shown, hey, we'll dump it outside to Zachariah Branch, and that'll get us on schedule, keep us on track, and keep them in third and manageable situations, where I think Gunnar Stockton's legs, like he showed last year against Texas, could be a very big difference maker.
Yeah, so I don't feel like necessarily the win against Mississippi State raised the bar for the offense, because we've seen some incredible performances out of them, especially the shootouts against Tennessee and Ole Miss. But where I really feel like the expectation has changed is for the Georgia defense, specifically for the secondary. Only gave up 173 passing yards, 0 passing touchdowns to Mississippi State, who's been averaging far more than that. Now, Texas is only passing for a few more yards than Mississippi State, just one ahead of Mississippi State in the SEC rankings. And this season already, Georgia's already faced the top 3 passing offenses in Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Alabama. I mean, Texas essentially has a limited run game, so if the secondary can play like it did last week, I feel like they should be able to take care of Texas handedly.
The most important thing for this secondary is the ability to come up and tackle. One of the changes that Texas has made is they've tried to get this offense on track after the loss to Florida. They've really cut down in terms of the average depth of target that Arch Manning is throwing down the field. Prior to that game, it was roughly around 12 yards downfield. It's closer to 6. They're doing a lot more screen passes, getting guys the ball near the line of scrimmage and using their athleticism to make plays. First play against Vanderbilt, 75-yard touchdown on a pass that was thrown 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Georgia's cornerbacks, their safeties, Ja'Cory Thomas, KJ Bolden, Janelle Aguero, they're going to have to come up and tackle in this game and get Texas on the ground. If Georgia's able to limit explosives in this game, I think it's going to be really hard for Texas to consistently go the length of the field on this Georgia defense, especially when we've seen they've had issues running the football this year, and with a much better offensive line, they couldn't run the ball at all versus Georgia a season ago. So I know it's a very different looking Georgia defensive line this year, and it's been a big point of contention, but I thought that group played very well against Mississippi State a week ago, and knowing that Texas's offensive line is a weak point, I think they've got a real chance to sort of start turning the narrative about them and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in terms of the pass rush and the defensive line as a whole, the ceiling has been raised, maybe like an inch, but we saw the best performance from them all season against Mississippi State when they recorded a season-high 3 sacks. And, I'm not saying that Georgia's going to somehow magically become, a sack machine, but at this point, Chris Cole is back and healthy. Zayden Walker's found a role for himself, and I feel like Quintavious Johnson is playing his best ball of the season. I know they say that you want to be your best, and even though I don't feel like the pass rush is ever going to become elite, they're certainly starting to improve at the right time. And if they can put even just a little bit of pressure on Arch, I think we're talking about the pass rush a lot differently coming out of this game.
And we saw a week ago Raylan Wilson getting a sack and a half. I think these inside linebackers, specifically Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen, are playing the best football of their career. C.J. Allen has been dynamic in short area yardage, and I think that for this group, those guys are looking like real NFL players, and that makes a big difference in this game. And I don't think yet that, maybe with the exception of the Ohio State game to open the season, they've seen a defense, specifically in the SEC, that plays with this level of speed, specifically at that second level. And so if Arch Manning is hesitant at all in this game, I think that's going to make things very, very difficult for him. And we've just seen him on the road. I know he threw for 300 yards against Mississippi State. They were down 17 points in the fourth quarter of that game, and that was a Mississippi State team that Georgia handled with ease. So you worry a little bit about what Arch might be able to do, because there's been this talk of him turning his game around. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt are 2 of the worst defenses in the SEC at this point in time. And so I think if you're Georgia, if you're able to go out there and rattle Arch early, it could make for a very long day. And we talk about starting fast, it seems like, every week. But with this Texas team and their inability to run the football, if you're Georgia and you're able to jump on Texas early and you're able to force them to be one-dimensional, that's going to make things very, very easy for your defense to sit back and really potentially tee off on Arch Manning.
And that sounds lovely. Now, I fully anticipate Texas to score on that first drive because, well, they've had 2 weeks to prepare for it. But at this point, I think all Dog fans have just accepted that that's always going to be a possibility. But, I just don't think that you want to go into halftime totally behind. Like, Texas has been able to play in these close games like Georgia has, and I feel like if you can just be in a comfortable margin going into halftime, you've got some trust, but you can't get down too much too early. But now just kind of moving into some big picture stuff, I think that most of us had the expectation that Georgia would finish the regular season at 10-2, which would have been a humongous accomplishment. But now that there's only 3 games left with Texas, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech, now that we've seen the best of Georgia and also see how the teams that they're going to play have kind of fared out, is the expectation that Georgia should win out?
No, I don't think so. I think the games against Texas and Georgia Tech are very losable, especially I think when you factor in that Texas and Georgia Tech are currently on the outside looking in at the playoff hunt, and they're going to need wins on their resume, and a win over Georgia would go a long way in helping those teams get in. I think Georgia only needs to split those games to get into the college football playoff themselves. But if Georgia wants to host a playoff game, they're going to have to continue to win. And look, hungry dogs run faster. And I do think that Georgia Tech and Texas are going to have a chance to really bolster their college football playoff resumes here, potentially by beating Georgia. One thing to monitor with Georgia Tech, their best path might be winning the ACC. So there's a world where they beat Boston College this week, they beat Pitt next week. That puts them in Charlotte for the ACC championship game. I wonder how that changes things for that Georgia game. Still knowing that Georgia Tech, that Georgia game is their absolute Super Bowl, even with the college football playoff, I believe, on the horizon for them potentially.
Yeah, I'll give one final thought on this, and then we'll go ahead and move on to dog bites. But I feel like, at least within the SEC, Texas is the last thing that you have inside of your control if you're Georgia. If you beat Texas, who knows what happens with the SEC championship? That's going to be based upon everybody else and what they do. But this is the one thing that Georgia can control, is getting the win over the Longhorns. And if they get that win, regardless of a win or loss at Georgia Tech, I think that they make the playoff. Like Connor said, they may not host a home playoff game if they end up losing this game, but I feel like if they win, whatever happens at Georgia Tech doesn't matter. But I do think, just from an outside looking in perspective, a win over Texas, like Connor mentioned earlier, puts Georgia back into that national championship contender, especially if they can do it like they did against Mississippi State, where they got ahead early, stayed ahead, looked dominant on both sides of the ball. So not only is this important for college football playoff rankings and how things play out, but also just maybe the public's perception of Georgia, knowing that this team can be consistent and are capable of playing two back-to-back dominant performances. So we'll see how it all plays out, but certainly based on their performance against Mississippi State, the expectation and the ceiling has been raised, and we'll see if Georgia can continue to raise that with a win over Texas. All right, so we've got dog bites coming up. We'll talk about Nate Frazier, Gunnar Stockton, CJ Allen, some other things. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are so excited to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what Zagoria Law Firm makes them so unique is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people who have been bitten by dogs, as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, give them a call at 833-GA-DOG-BITE, that's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. Now we'll do dog bites. So we got to talk about Nate Frazier, and not just because he was my touchdown prediction and he scored, but I mean, looking at the numbers, 12 carries for 181 yards, 1 touchdown, averaging over 15 yards per carry against Mississippi State. I feel like this was more so the version of Nate Frazier that we were expecting in the preseason. Really tough first half of the year. Luckily, Chauncey Bowens made up for some of that. But I feel like moving forward, we're not going to expect Nate Frazier to have those games every single time. But I think if he can just get his average yards per carry up, maybe somewhere in like the 5.5 to 6 range, that's what you need out of Nate Frazier moving forward.
Yeah, he ripped off multiple big runs, 3 runs of 30 yards or more. And the thing that I was most struck by was speaking with him after the game, talking about learning to have fun playing football again. I think he felt a lot of the pressure early on in this season with the NIL, with the expectations that he came in with. And for him to deliver a performance like that, especially with Miss Kim Allen weighing so heavily on his heart, the Georgia administrative staffer who unfortunately passed away last week, I think speaks all the more about Nate Frazier and why I think a lot of players, especially in this day and age where there's so much pressure and there's so much attention, maybe would have crumbled mentally after the fumbling issue that Frazier had, kept coming back, kept making plays. He had been a productive player for Georgia in recent weeks, but he had a career day against Mississippi State, and it could not have come at a better time for the sophomore running back.
All right, so we're getting into award season. There's 2 dogs that have stood out amongst the rest on being a ton of semi-finalist positions. One of them is Gunnar Stockton, which is crazy because before the season, Gunnar wasn't really on anybody's radar. Really shined this year. He's finished out for 4 semi-finalist awards, including the Davey O'Brien, the Maxwell Award, the Walter Camp Player of the Year, and also the Golden Arm in the top 10. That's a humongous accomplishment in itself. And then we'll take a look at CJ Allen's really quick. CJ Allen, we've already known that he was a Butt Kiss Award semi-finalist, also nominated for 2 other awards. And I think that these are important for 2 different reasons. Number one, for CJ Allen, this just confirms that CJ is everything that we knew he was capable of being. I don't think that he's going to end up being the Butt Kiss Award winner, but to see Georgia again in that race as a semifinalist continues this tradition of the new linebacker U. And for Gunnar, to show that he proved everyone wrong, wasn't on anyone's radar, and the radars that he was on, people weren't talking great about him, but he's had such an incredible season, so it's nice to see him get that recognition at this point in time.
Yeah, I know CJ's not going to win the Buckus Award won last year by Jalen Walker, but he is playing excellent football right now. It is getting very close to Roquan Smith levels, and obviously Georgia's just a different program from where Roquan had it back in 2017. And then with Gunnar, I wrote about him today on DawgNation. You know, as much as he's grown, as much as he's improved, his best and most meaningful attribute was always on display in that game against Texas. The way teammates rally around him, the way they believe in him. Oscar Delp gave a great quote this week just about how everyone knows Gunnar's willing to go that extra inch, and that motivates everyone else on the team to do it. And I think that's why you've seen Gunnar get better over the course of the season in obvious areas, such as passing over the middle of the field, not taking big hits. And while he may not win the award this year, he's still somehow an ascending player, even with as great as he has already played this year.
It's interesting that you bring up Roquan, because going into last week, C.J. Allen was tied for most tackles in the SEC. Now he has been surpassed, only 3 tackles behind the leader, which is Xavier Atkins at Auburn. But the last Georgia player to lead the SEC in tackles was Roquan Smith.
Yeah, and CJ, again, playing his best football. I think last week it was huge for Raylan Wilson to have a very productive game for Georgia, and when you're able to pair both of them together, it makes it really, really tough for opposing defenses, and it's not surprising for me that Georgia played so well against Mississippi State with Allen and Wilson playing as well as they did.
So we talked a little bit about Arch and Ty Simpson off the top. They are friends supposedly through quarterback camps that they participated in with one another, and they were chatting ahead of the game. They have a common opponent this week. It makes sense for them to do that. I get it, they're friends, but I just find this to be a little bit soft. I don't know. Like, go watch the film. Do the work on your own.
Hold on, you can't. No. I didn't hear you bring up the word soft when Kirby brought in Billy Napier. No. This is what friends are for. You lean on them. You go to them for advice. You share things. I have no problem with Arch asking Ty Simpson, because I think specifically with the quarterback position, specifically with the way Ty Simpson played against Georgia, it's really hard to replicate that, especially how capital G great he was on third down, quickly getting the ball out of his hands. That's as well as I think any quarterback has played against the Georgia secondary, and it always seems like Alabama's quarterbacks play at their best against Georgia. Conversely, I don't think Quinn Ewers played a very good game last year either time against the Georgia secondary. So I have no problem with Arch Manning trying to get any tips or help. All is fair in love and war. And this game on Saturday between Georgia and Texas, I think, is certainly going to be a war.
Let me ask this then. Whose information is more insightful? Is it what Arch knows about Oklahoma, or is it what Ty Simpson knows about Georgia?
It's what Ty Simpson knows about Georgia, because Ty Simpson has already gone into Sanford Stadium. When Arch played Oklahoma, that was a neutral site game down there in the Cotton Bowl. It was very different. I think Napier having to go on the road to Alabama is going to be quite an environment, especially given what happened last year between Alabama and Oklahoma.
All right, let's talk about the SEC championship game. Right now, it still looks like it's going to be Texas A&M and Alabama, but I mean, anything could happen at this point. We just know it's going to come down to that final Saturday eventually. More so, this conversation is about, do you want Georgia to play in it? I have been very vocal about this. No. I mean, we saw what happened last year. You lost your quarterback in that. Also, too, most of the teams, or I believe all of the teams that got the bye, ended up losing. You can't tell me that that was a coincidence in some way, maybe a loss of momentum, but just the state of this Georgia team and where their health is at. This is the healthiest this team has been. I would honestly rather them host a first-round playoff game, missed out on the SEC championship, be able to take some of that momentum with you. I understand there's a lot of history and tradition involved in the SEC championship game, but this is the new way of college football, and I know that you've said before that you would take away conference championship games if you had the opportunity. So for me, it's a no.
No, for me, it's a yes. Kaylee, I guess, just afraid to compete. I know what happened last year obviously impacted Georgia and the fact that they drew Notre Dame. I think the seeding and the way it was done last year impacted things maybe perhaps more than the conference championship games per se. But I think if you're Georgia, look, there's been one program that has gone to 5 consecutive SEC championship games, and that was Florida when it was first established from 1991 to 1996. Georgia's got a chance to do that in an era where it is much tougher to make it to the SEC championship game because 2 of those will be without divisions. And, as interesting as it is, Georgia, if they win on Saturday, will have a better SEC record than they did a season ago, but still not control their own fate towards getting back to Atlanta. And I think once you're there, you kind of have to go out there and win it. There's no sense in losing that game, especially because if you lose that game, you have to turn around and go play again 2 weeks later, so you don't get the benefit of the bye that would come during the SEC championship game or during the first round of the playoffs. I think it can do a lot for this team, and yes, you potentially worry about peaking too early. But at the same point in time, that Texas game a year ago in the SEC championship is an all-time Georgia game. It's a game a lot of players on this team are going to remember for the rest of their lives and be able to point to and celebrate. I wouldn't just give that up because just because you don't play in the SEC championship game, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to go farther in the college football playoff.
Yeah, but also another thing that I've kind of looked into is I do feel like for a Georgia team that wouldn't get a bye, where you want to be is the number 6 seed. I think that's the sweet spot. That way you're not going to run into the 1 until you get to the very end. I just think that's probably the easier side, and I feel like if Georgia plays in the championship, regardless of a win or loss, they're not going to be sitting at that 6 right there, which is where I think that Georgia wants to be.
That's fair. You just got to play the teams in front of you.
All right, let's do our other game. I think that Oklahoma and Alabama is a pretty easy answer, but also, too, Florida and Ole Miss is interesting to me. Maybe some bitter feelings for last year. I know Florida has been just absolutely tragic, especially after their loss last week. But in some ways, it just still feels like a Lane Kiffin coach team that's bound to have some sort of mess up just when you think that they finally have the college football playoff within their reach. So that's definitely one I'm going to be watching for the trap game or maybe the upset.
For me, it's Alabama-Oklahoma. I think that this is a game where I think Oklahoma's defense is more than capable of making things difficult for Alabama. I think this Alabama team has some serious flaws. They do not run the football well. And while Ty Simpson, in my opinion, is playing better than any quarterback in the country right now, at a certain point, if you keep putting games on his shoulders, eventually he can't play perfect all the time. Now, what does Oklahoma's offense look like? They have really struggled, but they went on the road and beat a good Tennessee team a few weeks ago. Obviously, Tennessee has a much different defense than Alabama does, but I think this is a game where I think a lot of people are just rubber stamping Alabama in. I think this is going to be a close 4-quarter knockdown, drag-out game, especially with how we saw Oklahoma beat Alabama last year, where that game was really not even close. And I know a lot of things went against Alabama that day, but I think that's a very interesting game leading into the big game of the day, obviously, Georgia and Texas.
So that's going to be our Dog Bites segment. Still to come, we've got Meme Machine. We'll do our 3 Georgia players that we think could get away with a little horns down, and also our touchdown predictions. But before we do that, big game coming up this weekend. One of the big 3. So, of course, we've got a DawgNation game day in store for you. It's going to start at 5:30. You can watch on any DawgNation platform, or if you're coming to Athens, join us in person. We'll be at the downtown Jittery Joe's location. You'll see people like Jeff Sentell, Connor Riley, Cody Chaffins. They're all going to be a part of the show on Saturday as well. So we'll hope you join in to watch all the last-minute information you need before Texas plays Georgia. And again, that starts at 5:30. Now we will do Meme Machine.
Who's that going down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's the Meme Machine and Randy Black. It's the Meme Machine and Randy Black.
Now we welcome in Cody Chaffins.
What's up, y'all?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Are we to touchdown predictions yet?
Not yet.
That's my favorite
We're
part of the
almost
show.
there. I'm sure it is. It's my least favorite part, coincidentally. Okay, so I'll go ahead and kick us off this week. I saw this during the Mississippi State game. I actually think I showed it to Connor. It was something that popped up on a message board, and it was about the Cowbells at Mississippi State. I guess the person on this site said, is it just a sympathetic concession from the SEC because Mississippi State has not been a threat most years? Seems mighty strange to prohibit artificial noisemakers but blatantly allow it for one university as the SEC addressed this publicly. 2 things I want to say about this. Number one, nobody could have prepared me for the noise of the cowbells. Not even really like the loudness or the volume, but all I could hear was a rattlesnake. Snakes are my biggest fear in this entire world. So for me, like the sound of it, that's all I could hear. So I couldn't get past that. And also too, this is a really good point. Like if Mississippi State were to somehow find its way into being a top tier SEC team year in and year out, I feel like other teams would make a bigger deal out of this. Now, I know they have some sort of rule where they have to stop before the play starts, but watch Mississippi State get good in the long run and people are going to start caring a lot more about that.
I'm not a fan of the cowbell. I thought, it sounded more like a bee buzzing than necessarily a rattlesnake. Like a cicada, great call there, Cody. But and look, it's their tradition. You don't want to dump on it too much.
Yeah.
I just don't think you can ask the fans to be loud without having an artificial maker.
I was very annoyed with this my first time there. It was what it was cracked up, except the one side of the stadium that's open. It really wasn't that bad on that side. Mm-hmm. And those fans last week were looking for a chance to quit. Georgia scored they were leading at the end of the first quarter, but they still were like, as soon as Georgia scored to make it 10-7, they're like, okay, that's it. And it's like, dude, it's 10-7. But no, they were looking for a chance to quit. So it got very quiet.
And also, too, when Jeff Levy decided to go for it instead of kicking the field goal, I feel like that was the big shift in energy to start the game, too. So anyway, cowbells, cool, not that cool. So Connor, Cody, we'll have you go next.
Yeah, I got a great this is a very popular meme format. Know the work rules. So appropriate. Indiana barely gets past Penn State 27-24, and she says, oh, you're so sweet. And then Georgia barely gets past Florida. Hello, human resources. Yeah, I feel like you heard the committee, Mack Rhodes, afterwards talking about how great and impressive it was that Indiana was able to fight through and beat. And then they're like, well, Georgia couldn't even barely beat Florida. The way they talk about these teams tells you so much. And listen to that post teleconference after the rankings were revealed. They look at it in a totally different light.
It makes no sense why people are so critical of Georgia in that sense. And they're falling over themselves to praise Penn State. I saw Ari Wasserman of On3 say, what a great win for Indiana over the number, I think, 2 or 3 preseason team. Florida was the number 13 team in the preseason, and that made no difference. Not to mention, I guess the Penn State team that was without their quarterback. But then Texas A&M goes on the road, pounds Missouri, and that win is looked at as a lesser than because, Missouri was playing its backup quarterback there. So the inconsistency with which they judge these conferences is just perplexing to me. And I'm not a pro SEC guy, but it is just very confusing to see the way that it has all turned out.
It's also very telling, too. So, Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, so I noticed that Kaylee did not mention this at the top of the show this week. But we played each other in fantasy football this past week, and the good guys came out with a commanding win. And for me in particular, I made a big trade last week. I traded Jamar Chase for Ladd McConkey and Zay Flowers. They ended up getting me 30-plus points, the difference in my victory over Kaylee. The 2 times we have played this season, I beat Kaylee by a wider margin. And I just had to think for one of Kaylee's North Georgia favorites in Ladd McConkey. Tell Kaylee I want her to know it was me from obviously Game of Thrones. With Lady Tyrell, just chef's kiss that a North Georgia guy can just take out Kaylee in this instance.
I was gonna give you the credit. I was gonna wait till the end of the show, but I was gonna bring it up. And listen, I'll say this: Connor would have beaten every other person in our league. I mean, it was probably the most points that somebody scored all season long, right? Your defense had 29 points, which is totally unheard of. So I thought that was a really great move with your trade, the first one of the season in our league. And, you rightfully had the win, and I congratulate you. But I don't feel as bad about the loss, knowing that it was outside of anything I could control. Even if I would have had my bench players who scored more in there, it would have never mattered. So. Yeah, so it was good though. It was really good.
Done in by Ladd McConkey.
That's okay. I can live with that. I can sleep at night knowing that. All right, so in just a moment we're gonna have horns down dog, which I'm really, really excited for. This one's good. This will allow us to get creative too. But I do want to ask that if you are watching DawgNation at large, if you enjoy what we do here on the show, if you could subscribe to our DawgNation YouTube page and also give this video a like, that would be such a huge help to us. I know sometimes it might be a lot to ask, but we really, really appreciate it. So just hit the subscribe button and also give this video a like. Okay, y'all remember Cash Jones when he hit the horns down last year? I think we did like a whole thing on that, and I feel like Cash was probably the right person at the time to do it, because I mean, how mad can you get at Cash Jones? I'm sure that he probably got punished behind the
very
scenes.
mad, as we've seen this season.
Yeah. Well, you're right. But I don't know. I just got to thinking, like, who are some people on this team that could get away with doing that, whether that's from like the fan perspective or maybe some of Kirby Smart's favorite guys? Like, who would be the ones that could do that? And it'd be like, okay, we can accept that. So we'll do 3 each. I'll actually let Cody start. I feel like you're always in the middle, so we'll let you go first. You got one?
The first one I'm going to go with is Zachariah Branch.
Yep.
I feel like he, at this point in the season, you can't tell that boy nothing. He can do whatever he wants right now. He is the stud of this team. So Kirby ain't going to say a word if Zachariah Branch throws the horns down.
I completely agree. I wrote it word for word in my notes. Same thing. Let Zachariah Branch, let the man do whatever he wants. All right, Connor, we'll let you go.
I've got Texas killer Dalen Everett. Came up big last year, twice against the Longhorns, 4 turnovers in the 2 games. The SEC championship game MVP. This guy has backed it up against Texas before, and if he picks up off Arch Manning on Saturday, I got no problem with him flashing the horns down there in that moment.
My first pick, I don't really think it needs that much of an explanation, and no, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I am from Northwest Georgia. Give me Cole Spear. Cody, go ahead.
Cole Spear. I loved your thing last week where Kirby's like, people think Cole Spear looks like me. So maybe that's the reason he could get away with it.
And 2, it's just like, what are you going to say? Like, he's been here forever. Like, he's on his way out at some point. He's going to have a nice little career doing whatever he wants. So I just feel like, he's definitely one of Kirby's guys. I think that he could get away with it.
All right, so we haven't had anybody take Gunner yet, right? So I think Gunner, he could probably get away with it. You could let Gunner do it. Okay. He's such a good kid, he'll never do it, but I'll say Gunner could get away with it.
I'm going to go KJ Bolden, and I know Kirby would jump all over him for doing so, but KJ Bolden's really important to this defense, and I don't think they can afford to take him out there in the secondary. So if we see KJ Bolden throw a little horns down, and I realize I'm cornering the market on the secondary guys, but I feel like I got to take a KJ Bolden here in this instance.
Yeah, I would just think back to Kirby last year getting on Nate Frazier doing the Gator Chomp. I think that would be a chewing out in that. Pretty close to that.
I feel like my next one could go 50-50, but I do feel like in some ways we've seen Kirby be a little bit petty in the past. Like, think to that Oscar Delp touchdown when he went to South Carolina as a true freshman. Maybe there was some negative recruiting on the South Carolina end. I feel like that was very much petty Kirby. And because of that, I'm actually going to take Justin Williams, because it did come down to Georgia and Texas for his recruitment. He is a Texas guy. Like I said, this could go 50-50 because he's a young guy, but I don't know everything that happened in that situation. But I feel like maybe just one time for the one time, because of the recruitment process with Justin Williams, maybe he just let him give like a small little mini one, I
like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go same kind of thread there. Kirby has not said nicer things about anybody on the team besides Dylan Bell this entire season. Dylan is a Texas guy. If he scores against Texas, it's going to mean something to him. I think Kirby would let him slide. Kirby has loved what Dylan Bell, he feels like he's so selfless and he's willing to change positions and he's just going to get it. So Kirby loves everything about Dylan Bell. Dylan Bell can get away with a horns down.
I like that pick. Connor.
First of all, I just like to note, I am not throwing a horns down until Georgia wins this game. I am not putting any bad juju out there. We've seen at times this season, teams have thrown the horns down at Texas prematurely and they've ended up losing. I know Kaylee's done it now. I just saw Cody throw it up. You will not see me flashing a horns down until this game goes final. Now, if that happens, I'm going to throw them left and right. My last pick, it's the easy one. It's the same guy that did it last year. He knows what the punishment is for throwing horns down. Give me Cash Jones. Plays a vital role for this Georgia team. And look, he's from Texas. He's a Texas guy. He did it last year before that first Texas game. They found a way to win. Maybe it's a little superstition. Maybe Cash Jones needs to throw the horns down in order for Georgia to get the win over Texas.
Hey, I mean, like you said, he knows the punishment, and I doubt. I guess this is Cash Jones' last year, so stakes are low, right? I'm gonna kind of go a similar route for this. I'm gonna go Oscar Delp, and I don't know if Oscar Delp would do this, but I feel like he is in some ways an emotional player. He's definitely on his way out after this. He came back after he didn't have to, and we saw him, was it after Tennessee? 4-0, 4-0, like. he is a little bit of an emotional player, so I could see him doing it in like a after the game setting, like running up to the student section, throwing it, and it's Oscar Delp. Like, what are they really going to do about it? I mean, there's tight ends that could, if he had to sit out a half or two, could play for him, but I don't know. I just feel like Oscar Delp, leader on this team, a little bit of an emotional player, but means a lot to the program, means a lot to Kirby. I feel like he could do it after the game.
I think Oscar Delp is the odds-on favorite to do it after the game if they win.
I feel like last year Georgia didn't let players do it, especially in Austin, because they thought, hey, we might see Texas again.
Yeah.
Even SEC champion, I think they thought, hey, we might see Texas again. So we didn't see it. I think Warren Brinson I caught on camera, the only guy that did it the entire 2 games of last year. But yeah, I do think they don't have that fear this year. You beat Texas now, Texas is kind of done. So you don't have that fear. So in Oscar Delp, he was so emotional after. I was cutting this week's hype video, and the video of him after the SEC championship game, he was so into it. And, he carried the team that first down in overtime.
Maybe after the game, you just need to stay focused on Oscar Delp just in case. I'm sure somebody's going to catch it, but it'd be cool if you were the one.
Georgia doesn't celebrate a lot a lot at home. I feel like they will when they used to have that way back in the day when they used to have that stage in front of the student section. They would get up on that stage and dance. They don't do that anymore. I wonder if this week, if they win that in their final SEC home game, if they would celebrate a little bit.
This is the part you've been waiting for, Cody. This is you. This is touchdown predictions. Before we do anything, let everybody's faces stay up. Let's clear the air on something here. There was something that happened in the press box on Saturday, and I overheard this conversation happening with you guys however many miles away in Athens. So I just wanted to clear the air on something. We were in the press box, and we're getting to the end. Connor and I's person has already scored. I wasn't sure who Cody took. I asked Connor. He said Gunnar Stockton rushing touchdown. And at this point, we knew that Ryan Puglisi was about to come in. So I let out a little chuckle, not because I was happy or sad that Cody wouldn't get his prediction, but I was like, that sucks because he's about to come out of the game. And in my head, it's like, it feels like what happened to me last week. Okay. It wasn't out of spite for you. Okay. I just want you to understand that. But I also want y'all to understand that I hear everything. I will find out everything. So if you're talking about me and you think I don't hear it, I do.
Hot mic pre-press conference.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, that is broadcasting 101. The mic is always hot. So let me just clear the air on that. I've already accepted that I'm probably not going to win at this point, and that's fine. It honestly makes this a little bit less stressful. So I just wanted to clear the air on that since we're at the back half.
Despite only being 1 game back. This is still anyone's game.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like right now Cody's got the momentum because, look, he's got 5. Connor has 4. I have 3. I feel like Cody's just been so consistent all season long. But now, I guess there's a chance that there's a lot more games left.
And I'm
just
starting
3
to run out
of
of people. I've been taking some favorites here.
All right. Connor, you go first this week.
The last time I took this player, it was a home night game against an SEC team. He fumbled in the first quarter. But I'm going to take Nate Frazier to score in this game. Would note last year in the 2 games against Texas, all 5 touchdowns came via rushing. Trevor Etienne was the guy to score those. I think Nate Frazier is going to get in the end zone this week. I think it's going to be a rushing touchdown. So give me Mr. Frazier. It is the second time this year I have taken Nate.
Cody?
For all those reasons we just talked about on the horns down, I'm going to go Dylan Bell this week. I think Kirby maybe wants to get him into the end zone.
Oh, this actually does make my decision tougher because I had 2 options. One feels like the safe one, but one, I feel like I need to maybe save that safer one for later down the road. Texas does have a really good run defense. That also includes in the red zone. I know that we haven't seen as much of Josh McCray as of late, but I feel like maybe this is the game where we get him back because he just is so big and they're willing to take that chance against a really good Texas defensive line. So I'm going to go with head over heart. I'm going to take Josh McCray for my second time this year, so that eliminates him from being picked in the future. But I feel like maybe we get him back. So that's mine. Cody's taking Dylan Bell. Connor's taking Nate Frazier. So we'll see how it all plays out. I want to say this is maybe the first time that somebody has not taken a Gunnar Stockton rushing touch. No, actually last week. Never mind. Confused. Okay. All right. So that's touchdown predictions.
Take us home.
Yeah. So I'm really, really excited to have this final home, or it's not the final home game, but it feels like in some ways it's the final home game. just to get one last one. And I know this isn't the Texas team that we anticipated would be coming into this game, but it's just another opportunity for Sanford to be electric. I'm excited to see what downtown looks like. And I know a lot of Texas fans are excited about making the trip as well. So I think that's cool that they get to experience it for the first time too.
It is a perfect example to enjoy the college football Saturdays while we have them. They have dissipated faster, I think, than anybody anticipated. And this is still a game that matters deeply to Georgia fans out there. You win over Texas. Doesn't matter if they're the number 1 team in the country, the number 10 team in the country, or the number 100 team in the country. With the way things went this offseason, the way Texas recruited, and the way they went after some of Georgia's targets, Georgia wins on Saturday. Even if it's by a point, they're going to be celebrating very, very hard.
And they have the chance to do it in front of a ton of top-rated recruits that I'm sure Georgia and Texas are all in the mix for. So with that, we will say thank you so much for joining us here on the show. As always, thank you to Connor, Cody, everybody in the studio that helps out. We'll have another show next week in store for Charlotte, and I cannot believe that the regular season's closing out. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you right back here next Thursday at 7 o'clock.